Good afternoon. The show is Diaspora Dispatches, and here's the latest news from across the continent of Africa. And we shall start with the developing story from Sudan. Sudan's paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces alleges it has shot down 2 military helicopters in a reprisal attack against the army. The army attacked its fighters in a Omdurman near the capital Khartoum on Thursday morning, despite the truce announced on Wednesday. The paramilitary group said it remained committed to the ceasefire. The army is yet to comment on the RSF attack claims. And still staying with Sudan, and Norway's ambassador to Sudan, Endre Stansen, has told the BBC that conditions are hellish in the capital Khartoum amid intense fighting between rival military factions. It comes as fighting continues for a sixth day. Prolonged gunfire and explosions were heard throughout the night, marking the failure of the second ceasefire attempt in as many days. Residents have been fleeing Khartoum, fearful about dwindling food supplies and the collapse of medical services. Clashes have been reported elsewhere in Sudan. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is due to hold online talks with the leaders of the regional bodies, the African Union, the Arab League and IGAD, in the hope of arranging a workable ceasefire. And the Libyan National Army, LNA, a group of armed forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar, has denied providing support to a rival party in Sudan amid the deadly fighting. General Haftar heads Libya's parallel government in controlling the east of the country, but which is not recognized by the international community. So LNA spokesperson Ahmad Mesri is quoted as saying in a statement by the Reuters news agency that the General Command categorically denies reports of providing support to any one party against the other in Sudan. He said the army was ready to play a mediating role between the rival parties in Sudan. The Sudan Army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have been fighting since Saturday in clashes that have killed at least 270 people so far. And Sudan's paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces on Wednesday said it set up a call center to receive distress calls from citizens and foreigners in the capital Khartoum. It said the room was located in the RSF's controlled area in Khartoum. RSF's announcement came a few hours after a fresh humanitarian ceasefire between Sudanese military and RSF was announced. Sporadic clashes were reported on Thursday morning. Despite the truce, medics have been unable to access hospitals amid intensified clashes in Khartoum and other parts of the country. Several countries have indicated they will be evacuating their citizens from Sudan. And a huge fire was reported in a building in Sudan's capital Khartoum hours after warring parties announced another ceasefire that seems to have collapsed. Sky News Arabia said the fire spread after an attack at a weapons store. A civilian activist group, the Khartoum Resistance Committee, posted on Twitter footage of the fire, saying it spread from Muhannad's weapon shop in Khartoum area. It said the fire was big and that the fighters could not be reached. Moments later, the committee said all the families trapped in the building near the fire had been evacuated. It is not clear who evacuated them. The Sudanese military and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces had agreed on a 24-hour humanitarian ceasefire on Tuesday, but the truce collapsed within minutes of its proposed launch at 6 p.m. local time. A new ceasefire with the same timing was put forward by the RSF on Wednesday. The army said it would abide by the truce, but gunfire could still be heard across the capital. On Thursday morning, there were reported clashes in several locations in the city. All right, now let's head over to South Africa. A Ukrainian Nobel Peace Prize winner on Wednesday called on South Africa not to allow Russian President Vladimir Putin to attend a BRICS summit in the country in August. Alexandra Romatsova, the head of an NGO that became the winner of Ukraine's first ever peace prize last year, urged the South African government to show to show Ukraine that they care. The ICC issued an arrest warrant against Putin in March, meaning Pretoria, due to host the Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa bloc summit this year, would have to detain him on arrival. If Putin were to come there and to not be arrested, this Nobel Peace Prize winner says it will be a great disappointment. The International Criminal Court warrant against Putin stems from accusations that Russia unlawfully deported Ukrainian children. Romatsova, the executive director of the Kyiv-based Center for Civil Liberties, suggested that Russian president could attend the BRICS summit via Zoom or send a minister who is not wanted by the ICC. CCL, which has run successful campaigns for political prisoners, tracked enforced disappearances and highlighted Russian war crimes, shared the Peace Prize with Belarusian and Russian co-winners last year. A continental powerhouse, South Africa has refused to condemn the invasion of Ukraine, which has largely isolated Moscow on the international stage, saying it wants to stay neutral and prefers dialogue to end the war. Earlier this year, it held a controversial joint military exercise with Russia and China, which critics cite as evidence of a tilt towards the Kremlin. Romatsova, who came to South Africa as part of a delegation comprising academics and non-profit organizations, met with senior officials at South African Foreign Ministry, but she was given the cold shoulder by the ruling African National Congress, ANC party. Okay, still staying with South Africa. South Africa's tourism board is due to be dissolved amid fallout over a proposed sponsorship for the English Premier League club Tottenham Spurs. Local media is now reporting the deal was scrapped last month following an uproar, especially from cash-strapped National Sports Federation and labor unions who believe the money will be better spent elsewhere. The 3-year shirt-sleeve sponsorship deal had been valued at about $51 million. And a 3-member team is expected to take over the functions of the board pending the appointment of a new board. Come back to East Africa, this time to Uganda. And Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni is due to meet members of parliament from the ruling National Resistance Movement and NRM. How could I not even say this right? It has been there for almost 40 years. NRM, okay? That is the National Resistance Movement, the ruling party of Uganda, still resisting. But on Thursday, to discuss the controversial anti-homosexuality bill passed by Parliament last month, the meeting will take place at State House in Entebbe, according to a statement by NRM Parliamentary Caucus Chairperson Dennis Obua. All members of Parliament are required to take a COVID test before the meeting. A state-run New Vision website reported the bill, which local media say Mr. Museveni is likely to sign into law, will see anyone engaging in acts of homosexuality facing 20 years in jail and a death penalty for convicts of aggravated homosexuality. Now, I don't know aggravated homosexuality, how that is supposed to look like. But I digress. Let me just finish up with this news item. The proposed legislation has attracted global condemnation, with the U.S. threatening sanctions on Uganda if the bill is enacted into law. Okay, I'll go Google that. I don't know. We head over to Nigeria, and Nigeria's Debt Management Office, DMO, has denied claims that the federal government defaulted in the payment of interest to China for loans. Local media had reported that Nigeria accrued a penalty of $90 million after its debt from China accumulated to $240 million in the last 2 years. The loans were reportedly taken to renovate some of the country's railway lines. In a statement on Wednesday, the DMO, that is Nigeria's Debt Management Office, termed the reports false, saying Nigeria was fully committed to honoring its debt obligations and had not defaulted on any of its service commitments. It urged the public to ignore the reports. As of December 2021, the DMO said Nigeria's debt to China stood at $4.1 billion. It was, however, silent on the current status of the Chinese loans to Nigeria. Nigeria has in the recent years suffered revenue losses following a spate of attacks on rail tracks and the kidnap of train passengers that resulted in the stoppage of train services on some routes for a while. And the East Africa Community Regional Force, EACRF, has denied claims of fresh clashes between M23 armed group and Burundian forces. Addressing a press briefing in Goma, EACRF Commander Major General Jeff Nyaga added that for the last 1 month there have been no clashes between the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, and the M23. But he said it is true that there was an incident in an area called Jerusalem, 13 kilometers from Sake, where a Burundian contingent on patrol came under attack. They conducted themselves in a very professional way and were able to capture 7 people of armed group. There were no casualties on their part, he added. All right, then we head over to Algeria. The Commission of French and Algerian Historians created to work on French colonization and the war in Algeria held its first meeting on Wednesday. The Elysee announced by revealing the composition of this body on the French side. The 5 French historians are Benjamin Stora, also co-president of the commission, Florence Hodowitz, curator of MUCAM, university professor Jacques Fremont, as well as historians and university teachers Jean-Jacques Jourdet and Tramor Quemois, indicated the Elysium, that is the official state house in France, the Elysee. This commission held its first meeting on Wednesday, the 19th. Now, the creation of this 10-member body was announced last August in Algiers by French President Emmanuel Macron and Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. It is a question of working on the history of contemporary Algeria to better understand each other and reconcile the wounded memories, recalls the press release. The independent commission will first work on the origins of French colonization in Algeria in the 19th century by drawing up an inventory of the archives deposited in France and Algeria, in which deal particularly with the colonial conquest, specifies the press release. Other subjects can then discussed concerning the period of the 20th century, in particular the sequence of war and decolonization, adds the Elysee. This is quite interesting, so I guess they're going down memory lane, and they might want to go back to 44, 18, from there on moving forward, when they had this meeting in Berlin on the partition for Africa. So I guess France will go down back there, and Algeria has really been giving France a very hard time, and I think in its push it's been wanting France to perhaps take up responsibility on its part, colonization. You know, Algeria, as much as it is a former French colony, French really spent so much of its resources in Algeria, because according to France, they treated Algeria as one of French's provinces, so it had so much advantages compared to other French colonies. And when you look at the level of development and all that, French treated it as one of its own. And so when Algeria and the culmination to decolonization and the agitation for freedom was going on in Africa, I think French intensified its show for love for Algeria in the hopes that it will not want to have to be independent, but that was not to be. But that's another history lesson for another time. Let me just finish out for this news bulletin as we head over to Burundi. The country has launched a search for its former Prime Minister Alain Guillaume Bunyoni, who authorities say could not be traced. Interior Affairs Minister Martin Neteretse told a press conference in Bujumbura on Wednesday that Mr. Bunyoni was being sought after, but he did not know the reasons behind the operation. Mr. Bunyoni was sacked last September following President Evariste Ndayishimiye's warning of a possible coup plot against him and top government officials who think they are untouchable. Mr. Bunyoni is a former police chief and had been in office as Prime Minister for 2 years. He had also served as Minister for Internal Security during late President Pierre Nkurunziza's regime. The former Prime Minister had been warned in advance that the news was going to tighten on him. He disappeared into the wild before the arrival of police, a senior military official told AFP on condition of anonymity. The official said the authorities had arrested a senior police officer for allegedly telling Mr. Bunyoni about the search operations. There were speculations that the Chief of Internal Intelligence, Alfred Moseremu, had also been detained over Mr. Bunyoni's disappearance. Now, if you told me that the news was somehow coming close to me, and I might be up for the dead, surely I will disappear into the world, whatever that means. So there's trouble. You know, Burundi is just one of those countries that people assume that, oh, by the way, that is the end of the bulletin, so you're now up to date. Burundi is just one of those countries that there seems to be some semblance of quietness, really. It has experienced several coups before, so I would understand why President Evariste Ndayishimiye is a worried man over any suspicion that somebody could be planning to oust him from power. His predecessor had a similar problem. Actually, there was an attempted coup during Pierre Nkurunziza's time in 2015, and after that, Pierre Nkurunziza could not leave the country to go anywhere. He could not. I think the one time he went to Tanzania, I believe, for just a few minutes, actually. Did he? But he never left. He never left Burundi since then, since 2015. So, and before that, the numerous leaders that had been there before had come to power through coups. So coups are very rampant and has really part of the history of Burundi's leadership and democracy. I don't know if I should speak on democracy, but yes, a part of that. So President Ndayishimiye's worries could be founded, and so he's saying this former prime minister, after he was sacked last year, actually they're saying that the possibilities that him and others are planning to stage a coup and remove him from power. So I don't know how truthful that is, or if at all there are any truth to that. But this person, and I think having been tipped off that he's could be arrested, I think he left, and so nobody knows where he is. So I think that could be more dangerous for President Ndayishimiye, because you don't know where he is and where he's gone to hide. You don't know what he's planning, and you don't know who he's working with. So that, I don't know. So anyway, we are just hoping that things do not get out of hand for Burundians there, because I think that country and its people have gone through so much. So they need to be given a break. Okay. All right, so I'll just skip over the issue of France and wanting to trace back its colonial history and what it has done to Algeria. Why is it only focusing on Algeria? Why is it only that Algeria is so important to him? I know to France, because I know Algeria has been very adamant. Algeria wants to really distance itself and cut ties and just leave its history back with France. Matter of fact, they just changed their notes last year. They included English in parts of the, of the writings on the bills there. That really angered France, and there was a whole parliamentary session in French Parliament discussing a currency of an African country, which I really fail to understand. But if you go back to the history, I tried, explaining just a little bit of that, and I'll not get into the details so much. The ties between Algeria and France is just a lot, and the kind of investment that France made in Algeria, it feels is just too much. And of course, what France stands to gain, and the influence, its influence that is really diminishing across Africa. So France is just trying to hold on to whatever little influence it still has, and the countries that still are willing, especially its former colonies, to work with it and have any kind of a good diplomatic relations. I think France is just trying to see anything else it can salvage from these relationships. But why is it only with Algeria? I think it should do the same with Burkina Faso, which has really expressed its disdain and over French's colonial history in that country. They should do the same with Mali. They should do the same with Central African Republic. How are you choosing and picking on how to address these historical problems over colonization France with Algeria alone? What will happen to the rest of your former colonies? I think this is something that should address, across board. Because it's not only Algeria that has been having a problem with you, France. Mali has had a problem with you. Burkina Faso has had a problem with you. Senegal, these other countries, your former colonies. So maybe you need to have a whole coming together, a whole summit of your former colonies and say, okay, fine, you guys sit here. Let's look at how bad we treated you. Let's trace back how we even ever entered your countries. And let's try to see what kind of thought process was addressing this during our forefathers before us, and see how we can reconcile the past with the future and see how we can correct some of these things and then start on a clean slate and move forward. So if you're only solving this problem with Algeria, well, this is something that has cut across board. I don't know if you're solving this problem at all, France. These are really murky waters and a very slippery slope. I don't know how far you're willing to go, but since you've started this journey, I think you should bring everybody else on board, everybody else that feels that French colonization history in their country really has messed them up, and they have some scores to settle and they have some issues to settle with you, France. I think you should do that. You should not just deal with one country while we have the rest of them still complaining about you and what that history means to their country and how that has affected even their own development. And you should start by bringing in these countries outside of just Algeria. Algeria benefited so much from you guys. Of course, your tainted history. There's so much that went on there, but I think for Algeria and France, it was a unique situation set up there. But you should bring everybody on board, not just Algeria, because there's so many other people who are complaining, and countries like the DRC. As much as you're not the colonial masters, but still, your handiwork and what you did there together with Belgium is still being seen. So I think it will be wise for you if you truly, France, if you truly want to address this issue and your tainted legacy on colonialism, you need to be honest and you need to bring everybody else on board, not just one country, but everybody else should be included in that, whatever that pass, however far you're willing to go, you should bring everybody on board and see how you're able to address these issues. So anyway, I was just bringing you up to date with this, what is happening in Sudan, and I think I don't want to repeat so much of myself, but there's a news item on that I found to be very interesting. The Libyan National Army, a group of armed forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar, have denied providing support. It's like if somebody now is coming out and denying, you just want to stop and see, okay, so who mentioned your name and why would your name be mentioned anyway? Because there are so many actors. Why are they not mentioning Al-Shabaab, for instance? Why are they not mentioning, why? Why particularly is your name featuring in this conflict? Libya now is saying they call themselves the Libyan National Army, these armed forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar. And they're saying they're denying providing support to a rival party in Sudan amid the deadly fighting. So in their statement, after denying support to any side in the conflict in Sudan, they had the nerve to offer to be mediators. Yeah. So General Haftar heads Libya's parallel government in control in the east of the country, but which is not recognized by the international community. So I'll quote what they said, what the spokesperson Ahmed Mesmari said. The General Command categorically denies reports of providing support to one party against the other. He said the army was ready to play a mediating role between the rival parties. I guess because you feel you're an illegal army, because you're not recognized in Libya. So you feel because these are two army officials fighting, so you stand a better chance of bringing them together. Well, you can't do that in Libya. Does this sound like a joke to you? Like, why? This is serious. What is happening in Sudan is serious. People are suffering. People are suffering. People have, the civilians now. The numbers keep going up, and as we speak, at least around 270 people have died. So Khalifa Haftar, this is no child's play. This is no jokes. It is a serious situation in Sudan that we need level-headed people. And I don't know why your army is featuring in this conflict. Maybe you should tell us, why would anybody accuse you of being part of that? And what is the correlation? Okay, so I found that to be really, really ridiculous. And I don't like when things like this, people start turning into to downplay the impact of what this conflict is having on the general public in Sudan. I don't think you'll be the right person to help mediate this process. If you can never even agree to come together between you and the other side in Libya and try and solve your problem so that the people in Libya can stop suffering, but you're worried so much about Sudan and you're offering yourself to mediate. Really? Okay. So the Egyptian army has confirmed the return of most of its soldiers held by Sudan's Rapid Support Forces as the paramilitary group battles the Sudanese army for a sixth day. In a statement recently posted on Facebook, Egypt's military spokesperson said 3 Egyptian military transport aircraft landed at an air base in Sudan on Wednesday to evacuate the troops, and they are safe and in good health. He noted that the evacuation had taken place under comprehensive security and the 3 flights had landed at an Egyptian military base in Cairo. The remaining soldiers who were securely moved to Egypt's embassy in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, would be evacuated once the situation stabilizes and the convenient security conditions allow their return to the country, the spokesperson added. Egypt's president had said earlier in the week that the Egyptian soldiers had been in Sudan as part of a joint training exercise. But why do you go to Sudan to train? What is this training? What is this training that these countries are having? And why would you think it was a good idea to have trade? What is really going on in Egypt? Because as we have been following the stories and how it has been unfolding in Sudan, it is not a place any well-meaning government would think that will be the time to send their soldiers there to train. What were they training for? And was this the right time? And when were they sent to train? Because the last 2 or 3 years, Sudan has not been that stable that a government would think it the right time to go and send their soldiers there to train, because of the rift that has existed and the instability, the quiet instability that has now gone out of proportion, and it has become a physical war. But your soldiers were in Sudan training. Okay, all right, so that is what was going on. Anyway, I'd like to stop here for right now. I think we shall see you some other time. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as our Muslim brothers and sisters, get ready for Eid tomorrow. I think we shall be joining you in the rest and the celebrations. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.